Hey guys, Jake Plot here, and today we're going to go over a foil tip, specifically getting from the first wave to the second wave. This is kind of the goal of most people when they learn foiling. This is like number one off in the distance thing that you want to do. And the reason it's so is that gives you the freedom to move around to wherever you really want to go behind the boat, which is a big part of the fun behind foiling. So first, let's go over the steps. Step one is going to be being comfortable on a foil in the wave without the rope. Step two is learning the places that you're getting power on both the first wave and the second wave. Specifically the second wave, it's a little challenging to learn your spots where you're getting power and where you're not, because the wave is a little more obscure, it's drawn out, there's not a clear power zone like there is in the first wave. So making sure that you've taken the time to learn where you get power and where you don't in the second wave is going to make all the difference with this transition. So once you've got your spot in the second wave dialed, figuring out where you're getting power and where you're not, the final step before you start to try to pump back from the first wave to the second wave is to get your rhythm down with pumping. The way that I'd recommend doing this is starting in the first wave, cutting out, and just starting to learn what it feels like to pump. And as you lose speed, get back in the wave. Essentially with pumping, your goal is to guide the wing through the full range of motion, from the wing being up near the surface of the water, down low, bringing it back up, and then you're getting your power to drive forward. One of the biggest things with pumping is keeping a rhythm to it. And every foil is slightly different with that rhythm, but you want to do what feels right with your foil. If you're pumping too fast, it's actually going to push the foil down and slow you down because you're not letting it go through the full range of motion. And if you're pumping too slow, it's just going to slowly die out underneath you. So with every foil being different, taking the time to learn the cadence that your foil works with is key. The other major thing with pumping is that you're not necessarily trying to force the wing down. You're not pushing with your legs as you're pumping. It's more of a de-weighting, bringing the wing up, and then keeping a constant pressure on it on the way down. You're just trying to allow the wing to go up and down as it needs to maintain its momentum. Finally, you really want to try to think about your front wing and your tail wing as like an airplane flying through the water moving forward. So you're not trying to push both of them down at the same time as you're pumping, because then you're just going to scrub any momentum you're getting. You're trying to guide the forward wing and the rear stabilizer through the motion of down and up that builds a constant speed as you're pumping. So rather than trying to jam it down, you're just giving it a little up, down, motion that is actually accelerating that wing forward, not just straight up and down like you might typically think you would do when you're pumping a foil. A lot of times that's what it looks like, but really you're trying to guide those wings through that motion. Once you've got a decent rhythm with your pumping and you're able to keep speed for a little bit outside of the wake and then move your way back in, it's time to start going for it. And that's where it really gets fun. The start from how you get from wave one to wave two is one of the biggest determiners in your success rate. So you want to make sure that you start with a fairly aggressive turn out away from the boat. If you're too mellow, you're not going to move back enough. And if you're too aggressive, you're going to throw yourself off balance. But you want to have as close to a 90-degree turn out away from the boat as you can. Let your speed continue, because as you're going through your turn, your speed is actually going to be building. It's when you flatten off that it's going to start to slow down underneath you. So take that sharp turn away as close to 90 degrees as you can so that the boat keeps moving as you're moving out. Once you feel the speed underneath you starts to subside a little bit, that's when you'll start to pump. So going through the same motions that you went through on wave one, as you start to pump to wave two is key. So you're just guiding that foil through the motions, trying to keep it accelerating and keeping that wing up high. As you're pumping out, you want to get out fairly far away from the boat, probably a little bit further than you think. Most people will turn out, pump a couple times, try to turn back in, and by the time they come back in, they're still way ahead of the second wave. So giving yourself time to pump, 75, 100 feet out from the boat is going to be really helpful, so that as you come back in, you're in the right spot on the second wave to immediately get power and get saved. So you're taking that 90-degree cut out, pumping around 75 feet out. Now you'll take a toe side turn back in. The reason you want to go toe side is you don't want to drift too far back. If you just keep going the way that you turned out, it's going to take you back to like the fourth wave. Right now we're just trying to go 1 to 2. So you're cutting out on your heels, taking that toe side turn back in. And this is a fine line too. You want to take it fairly mellow as you take that toe side turn, because ideally you want to keep the same rhythm of pumping through that turn. This is tricky at first. It might throw you off balance a couple times as you're first starting to do it, but you don't need to turn crazy sharp. Just maintain that rhythm as you start to lean on your toes to get through that turn. Point yourself back 90 degrees at the wake and just follow the wave into that second roller. For troubleshooting, if you're getting close to this at this point, if you're ending up behind the second wave, you might be going out a little too far to the side. Just don't go out quite as far. If you're coming back in way ahead of the second wave, two things that might be happening is you're not going out far enough, so take it out a little further, or sharpen up the initial turn away from the first wave so that you track backwards a little bit more rather than keeping speed and momentum up with the boat. That might keep you too far ahead of that second wave. Finally, as you go to make the last turn, to correct course and line up with the boat again, make sure you're keeping the foil nice and high, because the higher the wing sits in the water, the more efficient your foil will be. If you're starting to get really low, you're going to get a lot of drag and it's going to slow down underneath you, making it harder to regain the necessary speed to catch up with the boat. But if as you go in to make that final turn, you make sure your wing is nice and high, you should immediately get caught in the face of the wave, push forward, and you're back and going on wave 2. This is a really fun process. It takes a bit of trial and error to go through this whole thing, but if you go through the steps of learning the spots on both the first and second wave, getting comfortable pumping, putting those pieces together help a lot rather than just a shot in the dark and going for it. Once you make it from wave 1 to wave 2, the doors are wide open for going side to side, back to wave 3, back to wave 8, pretty much wherever you want to go behind the boat. Once you make the transition from 1 to 2, those doors are wide open, and that's where the exploration of foiling gets extremely fun. Hope you found this breakdown helpful of getting from wave 1 to wave 2 and beyond. If you did, make sure you subscribe to follow along for more content. Thanks for watching.